So there I was, sitting in my office, not in Lakewood, my office in Borough Park. I was waiting for my next appointment to arrive, and they were late. And which is not unusual. People do come late sometimes, but what was unusual is that I can usually anticipate who's going to come late. And this was not an appointment that I expected to come late. I was scheduled to be evaluating an 8-year-old boy. And I met with his mother, a single parent, the week before. We discussed it. She had arrived on time for the initial consultation. She told me about her son, the questions that she had, she was concerned about him. He was presenting some behavioral problems at home and in school. She wanted to have him evaluated, spoke about it. And I couldn't imagine that she'd forget about the appointment. And she was on time for the consultation. Why would she be late? And I was just about to pick up the phone and call, see maybe she mixed up the time or something. And the phone rang, it was her. She said, Dr. Wikler, I'm here for my appointment. I said, well, where are you? She said, I'm in front of your house. I said, why don't you come in? She says, my son doesn't want to get out of the car. I said, why not? She said, he said he's not coming, not going to come in. He doesn't want to speak to you. I said, well, what did you tell him? She said, well, I told him exactly what you told me to say. We went over it last week, and I wrote it down. And I told him exactly what you told me to say. And he said he was going to come, but now he decided he's not coming. And I don't know what to do. I mean, should I bribe him? I said, well, bribery is a last resort. But under the circumstances, I guess this is the last resort. You won't get out of the car, you have no choice. So bribe him. And I waited a few minutes. I'm looking out the window, and I see she's coaxing him out of the car. And she's coaxing him kind of down the driveway and up to my office. And he's like, you could see with the body language, he's not a happy camper. And he doesn't like the idea. And it takes about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Finally, I get in the door, comes into the waiting room, and he absolutely puts his foot down. There's no way he's going in to talk to me. There's no way. And she's trying to coax him and bribe him, and I see the price is going up and up. It's like getting higher and higher, and she's throwing everything at him, offering him the world practically. Chatzia Malchus, just to come in and talk to me. So finally I said to her in the waiting room, I said, look, if he's so against coming in, then let him stay out here, and I'll talk to you, and you come in. Okay. So she came into my office, closed the door. Boy was out in the waiting room. And I said, tell me what's going on, what happened, what did you say to him, what happened this morning? And she started to tell me, basically just review what I had suggested that she say to him. And we weren't talking more than a minute or two. The door opens. Ma, come on, we're going home. The 8-year-old comes into the office and says, not only does he not want to speak to me, he doesn't want his mother to speak to me either. So she says, look, we made the appointment, and I'm going to talk to Dr. Wikler, and you can wait outside, I'm not going to bother you, just let me speak. No, I don't want to speak to him, and I want to go home now. I want to go home now, he says. Really very assertive and very forceful. And she said, well, look, we're here already, and I want to talk to him, so please go out. No, I'm not going out. You come with me. I'm not. I'm speaking to Dr. Wikler. He goes over to where she's sitting, and he starts pulling her. Now, an 8-year-old boy can't physically lift a middle-aged woman, so he wasn't getting very far. And then he started being even more aggressive, and he started hitting his mother. He said, Ma, we're going home now. And he started hitting her. Well, she felt at that point she couldn't resist any further. And she said, I'm very sorry, I guess I'll have to go home. So as she's walking out the door with her son, she says, so what do we do now? We didn't have the evaluation. I didn't get a chance to speak to you. What do I do now? I said, I guess you'll have to call me after you get home. What else to say? So later that day she called and said, well, what do I do now? I said, I think we're going to have a talk. I think you should come in next week, and we're going to talk about this a little further without your son. And she did. And that really introduces the topic for this evening, which is the important topic of setting limits for children. And the title of the talk was the right way to set limits and to say no to children of all ages. Now, I don't want to leave you with a cliffhanger. What happened to this 8-year-old boy? I started working with the mother on the important issue of learning how to set limits for children. And it turned out that she had some of her own personal issues that were interfering with her ability to do what needed to be done, to set limits for her son. And we had to address those issues before she could even begin to learn how to set limits. But once we did, things kind of straightened out. It took a while, but I happened to speak to her recently, and her son is now masmid, getting rave reviews from his rebbeim and mesifta, and looks like he's well on the road to becoming a real Ben Torah. Now, our topic tonight, though, is setting limits for children and how to do that. And first we have to study a couple of psukim in Sefer Melachim. Melachim Aleph, right away in the first parak, the pasuk tells us the story of Adoniyahu, David HaMelech's son. If it sounds familiar, it should, because this represents the Haftorah of Parshas Chayesara. Pasuk says, Adoniyahu ben Chagis, one of David HaMelech's wives, Misnasei, he was boasting, being proud of himself, Lemor to say, Ani emloch, I'm going to assume the kingship. He was going to usurp the throne in the lifetime of his father, David HaMelech. And not only that, not only did he have intentions, but even went further to carry out his plan. V'yaslo recheb, made himself a chariot, uparoshim, and horsemen. V'chamishim ish rotzim lafanav, and 50 men were running in front of him, which was the custom in those days that a king would have people running in front of him as part of his entourage for his kavod. Now, this was a terrible tragedy. Even though it's understandable that Adoniyahu might assume that he'll become king. After all, he was the oldest son of David HaMelech at that time, after Avshalom had died. And he was the oldest at that point. So it's understandable that he might assume that he would become king. However, David HaMelech was still living, and no one told him he's supposed to become king. And this was a terrible tragedy that ended up in his eventually being executed as a Maariv b'machos. Now, how does a thing like that happen? How does a prince who had a wonderful future ahead of him make such a terrible blunder in life to try to usurp the throne in his father's lifetime? So the next pasuk answers everyone's question. How did this terrible tragedy come about? The next pasuk says right away, V'lo atzavu aviv miyamav lemor. Never once did his father, meaning David HaMelech, sadden him to say, Madua kacha asisa. Why did you do that? Why did you act that way? Why didn't you do what I told you? To criticize him. In other words, his father never criticized him. V'gam, and another reason that contributed to his making this tragic error, Gamu tov Torah me'od, he was a very handsome man, Adoniyahu, very good looking. He looked the part. He looked like a king. V'osa yalada acharei Avshalom. And his mother gave birth to him after Avshalom, meaning he was next in line, so it's understandable. Now, on the phrase that the pasuk tells us that his father never criticized him, never set limits for him. Now, David HaMelech, great person, but apparently in the parenting area, he was lacking. And Rashi says, Lo yachiso, he never got him angry. David HaMelech never got Adoniyahu angry, never upset him, never said anything that would disturb him in any way, never criticized him for anything, his whole life, even as a small child. Lametecha, Rashi says, this is coming to teach you, all of us, a very important lesson. What's that? Shehamonea tochacham ibno, if you hold back criticism from your child, meviu lidei misa, you're going to cause him an untimely death. This is Rashi talking, not Meir Wikler. This is Rashi criticizing David HaMelech's parenting of Adoniyahu. Adoniyahu committed this terrible atrocity of trying to usurp the throne in his father's lifetime as a result of not having limits set for him when he was a child. So the pasuk is making it very clear to us that it's necessary to set limits for children of all ages, young children, older children. Children need to have limits set. Okay, so we understand that. But how are you supposed to set the limits? What's the right way to set limits for children? So for that, we need Chazal. We need a Gemara in Sotah that I've quoted before at the Vaad, but I want to quote it again because it's so important. Adaf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, La'olam, always, not sometimes, not most of the time. La'olam means always, no exceptions. Tehei small doicha, the left hand should be the one that's pushing away, giving rebuke, criticizing, saying something negative. V'yamin mekareves. And the right hand, the stronger hand, is the one that brings close. So you do have to set limits. You have to say no. You have to criticize. But you do it with the left hand, the weaker hand, not the stronger hand. Lo ke Elisha. Don't make the mistake that Elisha made, Elisha Hanavi. Shedachvu legechazi b'shtei yadav. He pushed Gehazi away not just with the left hand, and not just with the right hand. He pushed Gehazi away with both hands. And we know the tragic results of that. Beloki Yeshua ben Prachia, and don't do like Yeshua ben Prachia. Shedachvu le'echad mitamodav b'shtei yadav. And he pushed away one of his Talmidim also with two hands. So you have to use the weaker hand, the gentler hand, when you have to set limits. Okay. But how do you do that? Halacha l'maisa, rachel bitcha katana, in practical terms, how do we apply this chazal? So, I was speaking about this topic once before, a number of times before actually, and I came up with a Rashi Tevis that makes it easier to remember the right way to set limits for children. Now usually, when it comes to setting limits for children of all ages, it's a situation where the child wants something from the parent. Either they want the parent to buy something, to do something, to give permission for something. They want something. So the acrostic is very easy to remember. It's the word want. Children are always wanting things. Parents have to set limits when they want things. They can't always have everything they want. Adoniyahu had everything he wanted, and we saw what happened to him. He ended up being executed as a Maariv b'malchus. So what does want stand for? Well, the first letter of want is W. That stands for warmth. A lot of parents make a mistake, and they think when they set limits, if they have to say no, they have to do it in a cold, harsh way. No! With a gruff voice, furrow the brow, scowl, and say, no, not allowing you, you're not going to go. It's much harder to take a pill when it's bitter, but if you add a little sugar coating to it, like all the children's medicines today are sweet, kids are not fighting. I remember when I was a child, I had to take medicine. I had an awful big bribe before I'd be willing to swallow that pill. But today, it's got sugar in it. Kids want to take the medicine. It's easier. If you have to set limits, do it with warmth. Nothing wrong with smiling when you say no. Sorry, I'm not going to let you. It can be with a smile. It can be warmth. It can be a gentle tone of voice. So that's the first rule of how to say no to children, is do it with warmth. The A is the next letter of the word want, and that stands for acknowledging feelings. When children want something, and the parents don't grant it, don't give it, or don't allow it, the child is suffering twice. Once, he's not getting what he wants, and second, is he feels his feelings are being disregarded, ignored, overlooked, not even considered. So parents can acknowledge feelings without giving in, without granting what the child wants, but acknowledging how the child feels about it. In other words, I understand that you feel all the other boys in your second grade class have smartphones, but I'm sorry, we're not going to allow you to have a smartphone. Now, at least you're acknowledging that the child feels that this is what everyone's doing and he doesn't want to be left out. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that you're acknowledging that it's so, that it really is true that all second graders in his class have smartphones. But he thinks they have it, he wants to be like everybody else, and you understand he'd like to be like everybody else. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be like everybody else, it's just that we're not letting you have a smartphone. So you can acknowledge the feelings. I know you'd like to go on that trip. I know you'd like to go on that ride. I know you'd like us to buy you this. I know you'd like to have that. And I understand that you want it, and understand you feel bad you can't have it. But the answer is still no. Now, that's the A. The N, you all know how to spell the word want. The next letter is N. Stands for no anger. Sometimes parents get very angry when they're asked things that they don't want to allow. Not only do they have a scowl and they're cold, but they're angry. Huh? You're asking for that? Such a chutzpah. I gave you this before and you're asking something else? Parents get angry when their children ask for something. Now, you can say no without being angry. A child shouldn't feel that he's not allowed to ask. There's no crime in asking. You can say no, but it doesn't mean the child can't ask. We ask many things that are Ribono Shel Olam. And many things we ask for, Kadosh Baruch Hu says no. But if Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't say, I don't want your tefillas, you're not entitled to have it, don't even ask. No. That's not what Chazal tell us. Chazal tell us we're supposed to ask for everything. And the more the better. And we should be davening all day long if we are able to. We should be asking for many things. People say, oh, it's too small a thing to daven for. There's no such thing as too small a thing. You can daven for everything. You can daven for a parking spot. Here in Lakewood, it's not such a problem, but in Brooklyn, where I come from, there's a big problem with parking spots, and you can daven for parking, you can daven for anything. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to daven to Him, because that's how we have it closest to Him. And if our children are asking us many things, it's because they're close with us too. And they shouldn't be angry just because a child asks. So the end is for no anger. Now the T, the word want, stands for try to negotiate. What does that mean? That means it doesn't have to be winner takes all. It doesn't have to be that there's no compromise. A child shouldn't feel that they're getting nothing. Reikam al tishivenu. Don't let us go away empty-handed. Ep is something. So when parents are setting limits, it's always more helpful and more effective if you can negotiate. For example, we can't let you play ball in the living room, but you could play ball on the porch. We won't let you ride the bike now, but tomorrow you can ride the bike. You can't ride in the street, the scooter, but you can ride on the sidewalk. In other words, when you have to say no, it's always good if you can offer something that is allowed. I can't agree to it now, but when you get older, you'll be allowed. I can't buy this for you now, maybe I'll buy it later. I can't buy two, I will buy one. I can't let you go this time, next time I will. In other words, at least the child should feel they got something. They didn't come away empty-handed. If it's possible. If it's not possible, it's not possible. But whenever possible, you should try to negotiate so that the child doesn't feel it's coming up completely empty-handed. And if there's some way that you could find a way that under certain circumstances, under certain conditions, that you will allow it, then by all means you should. Now, it's not a secret that I've spoken about this subject before. And I spoke about this very subject to a parents group in a yeshiva katana in Beit Shemesh, in Eretz Israel. And when I speak to groups of parents, very often I take questions afterwards. And one of the first hands that went up during the question period was someone sitting right in the front, who was the manayil of the yeshiva. And I was very taken aback. The manayil was going to ask me a question. I should be asking him questions. I was very flattered that he even came to the talk that I was giving. And I was a little hesitant to call him what kind of question he's going to ask me. I was very taken aback. He said he liked to talk very much. He enjoyed especially the Rashi Tevis that I gave. And since his parent body is bilingual, and he has some parents that only speak Hebrew, he was thinking during the talk of how he could transpose my acrostic into Hebrew. And the whole time he was thinking how he could do it, he finally came up with it, he wanted to share it with me. So he didn't have a question, he might have commented. I said, I'd love to hear it. He said, well, the word in Hebrew, to want, is lachpotz, lachafetz, to want. Lamed, ches, pei tzadik. So he came up with the acrostic in Hebrew. It worked the same way. I said, really? Tell me how that? Well, the lamed is lo lechos. Don't get angry. Okay. The ches is cham, warm. Set limits in a warm way. You don't have to frown, don't have to scowl, don't be cold. You can be warm when you're setting limits. Okay. The pei, it stands for pshara, a compromise. In the tzaddik, it's tzarech lahavin rikshosov. You have to understand your child's feelings. I said, wow, that's amazing. I said, next time I talk about this, I'm going to mention your acrostic together with mine. So whether you do it in Hebrew or you do it in English, there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. There's a right way to set limits and to say no to children of all ages. And the way to say no is to remember the word want, or if you prefer in Hebrew, lachpotz. I just want to remind everybody that the next Vaad, B'ezras Hashem, will take place in 4 weeks, which comes out to be Sunday, November 12th. And it'll be here in the Sterling Place Shul, downstairs. And I want to also remind those of you who may be watching this video at home that we're also on the website Torah Anytime. Very happy to be part of that wonderful website. If you're not familiar with it, you should check it out. There's a tremendous wealth of shiurim available there, and we're very honored that this Vaad also appears in Torah Anytime. You can also get the previous Vaadim, and if you want to subscribe, you can subscribe and get them as well. And hope we'll see you all back in B'ezras Hashem in 4 weeks for the next Vaad.